technology, blocks, bites, grilling. Welcome to Blocks and Bites.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Blocks and Bites, the grilling and technology show. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that's kind of been interesting to me for a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about VMware Tanzu. So, Scottie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Scottie Ray. I'm a solutions engineer at VMware. I work within our modern applications platforms business unit.
Excellent. And
Tanzu related.
Yeah, awesome. And so before we dive into the food, or actually, I'm sorry, before we dive into the tech, what are you grilling for us tonight?
So I thought we'd go a little bit different. I live down here in Pensacola, which is in the Gulf Coast, and we're a big fan of our seafood down here. And so, as you can see here, I got some lovely red snapper that I picked up actually at the seafood market this morning about 7:30. It's nice to go down there early, get some of the fresh cuts that's out there. So we're just going to do some snapper grilling today.
Awesome, awesome. Sorry about that. I don't have quite the seafood selection up here in the upper Midwest as we do on the Gulf Coast. So I went for an old standby for us. I am going to do some Alaskan wild-caught salmon. Bring us a little bit closer to the camera. As my guests usually know, there's an upper view that usually happens. But unfortunately, this time, that's not going to happen. We're going to do a little bit of work with some pictures and some cell phone cameras. And also, because it looked good, I also picked up some lake perch. Now, you can't see it because it's foil packed. That's how I'm going to cook the perch. And we're going to do it about 20 minutes in the foil pack, and the salmon will take 10 to 15 on the plank. So we're letting the plank heat up a little bit here first. So with that being said, VMware Tanzu.
Yeah.
Now, Kubernetes is big. You're seeing it more and more in the enterprise. Now you're starting to see it more and more into the medium and the lower sized businesses. What are we looking at when it comes to Tanzu? What are like some of the basics?
Well, so if we think about, the developer, the whole idea around application modernization, right? Within the concept, there's really sort of 2 or 3 problems that a lot of organizations are facing. One is, Kubernetes represents this sort of next tier of API-driven infrastructure. So how do I, deploy platforms? How do I manage, Kubernetes as fast as it's moving? How do we build software in new ways that's a little bit more modern and cloud native in that regard? How do we secure it? How do we manage this distributed reality? So the Tanzu is not really a product as much as it's a portfolio. And that portfolio is really designed around helping customers build software, and consume open source software in more secure ways, build custom software, run these platforms, whether they're running it on-prem or, in a cloud, and then provide a policy framework, a management framework over all of these, distributed realities, whether, again, we're dealing with platforms running in public or private cloud, sort of a multi-cloud approach.
Cool. Just got my timer started here for my lake perch in the pouches. So, you said it's more of a portfolio. It's a framework. Now, what are some of the early adopters doing? What are you looking at when it comes to Tanzu and this framework into this portfolio? If you want to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I see it. It really is about meeting the customer where they're at. So it's interesting if we look from like you think about it from a bottom up and a top down approach. There is the need to provide a level of infrastructure, allow for platform operators, et cetera, to be able to deploy new, modern platform container orchestration, if you will. So there are a lot of customers that maybe are traditional infrastructure or platform operations that are trying to deliver new platforms. But on the other side, from an application development perspective, how can we take, code that a developer is writing and get it into production faster? How can we get it into production more secure? How can we, map to some of the outcomes that organizations want to achieve through their applications? And so that could look at, code to container types of solutions, build service, or how can I make sure that when I download something, I'm downloading an image that's, from a security perspective, less risky, that some of our, Bitnami assets and things of that nature. So it actually is not really one thing that consumers are doing from an early perspective. It actually is really dependent upon which part of the organization is being engaged with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I just spilled a little bit of oil on my plank here. So how are you cooking your food tonight? What's the strategy for your seafood?
I am super simple. I'm a charcoal guy. I haven't owned a gas grill in 20 years, so I use a lot of hardwood lump charcoal, and I like to do my fillets with the skin side on it. I like to use that skin because it gives the fillet and the meat a little bit of protection over the heat. And then what I do is I arrange my coals on the outside in a circle so that I can use the center of the grill to get really, really good and hot. But the oil that I use to kind of keep the fillets from sticking doesn't, drip into the coil, and I get flame ups and things of that nature. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I don't want to overpower a snapper. A snapper's got a really good flavor. It can stand up to the heat for a long period of time. So really just a very simple approach.
That sounds very delicious.
What
now
about
we had.
I've not cooked a lot of. What you doing? The lake perch?
Yeah, so lake perch, especially around the upper Midwest here, it's often found in fish fries. So the Friday fish fry, you get it breaded and you get it deep fried. But I was doing some research, and there's actually a few different methods you can go and cook the perch. You can actually grill it proper, like on the grill, with some seasoning. I'm doing the foil packets with. I put a little bit of olive oil and some seasoning on it. I'm actually doing Cajun seasoning on the perch tonight. It sounded interesting. It sounded good. So I just put a little sprinkle of Cajun seasoning on the perch, a lemon wedge or a lemon slice, and a little pat of butter. That's all wrapped into the foil. So that way the butter melts and it brings some of the lemon down into the fish with it as well. As for the salmon I got a pound of it at our local fish market, and I just cut it into three big chunks. And I put, again, that same olive oil and the garlic blend onto it. And I did a blend of seasoning, salmon seasoning. So it's, wow, I'm really smoky right now. This is kind of fun to look at. So I did, it's like sage. It's got some thyme, some dill. It's got a few different seasons, a little bit more light to bring out some of that salmon flavor as well. And of course, a squeeze of lemon across the top. Just for the flavor. And with the cedar plank, I was reading there's many different ways to prep the plank. I actually soaked it in water, and then I threw some bourbon in there just to try. Because I've read where you can soak it in wine and you can soak it in sake and a few other things to bring out flavors. So I was like, well, I'm a huge bourbon fan, so let's go ahead and roll with the bourbon. So
yeah, well, I did a little surprise for my family. Not big on the oysters. I'm really the only oyster guy in the house. So they had a little bag of some fresh oysters. So I just threw those on the grill. We're going to steam them a little while, crack them open and see what that has to do.
That also sounds delicious. That's another thing we don't get often around here by me is the fresh oysters. We can find them, but it's not something I really want to mess with too much. And sorry, I actually had to adjust. Looks like we had a little bit of lens flare. So as we film these episodes, gets later and later into the year, and now it's trying to figure out the right spot for the sun. And I guarantee you, in about 5 minutes, it's going to be behind that garage behind me, and that lens flare will no longer be an issue. So that's the joys of filming outside. And some people might notice we did take a little bit of a break between filming episodes. We've got the deck painted all nice finally, so a little bit more nicer aesthetic for the background. So, okay, well back to the technology. So, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't. So obviously, you talk about that portfolio, talk about Tanzu. Can you talk about where Project Pacific comes into play?
Sure. What Project Pacific or vSphere Tanzu is essentially about embedding Kubernetes capabilities directly into the hypervisor. Now, there's two fundamental reasons to do this. Number one, again, back to the discussion that I was mentioning earlier about sort of aligning and linking together the bottom-up view of delivering modern, application platforms and the top-down. The idea here is that if we think about the vSphere admin or the infrastructure, operations delivering this new type of platform, we want to be able to give them patterns that they are familiar with, vCenter patterns, that is, setting up resource pools, adding permissions, tagging data stores through processes that they're familiar with, but at the same time providing an automated way for them to deliver cluster as a service, maybe to a DevOps team, and have the consumer of that cluster, be it a pipeline or a development team or something of that nature, to be able to consume a native upstream Kubernetes API. And so it brings these two audiences together, and does so with a very rich experience for people to deploy these platforms and lifecycle it. The other thing that it does, actually, the second main thing, is that Project Pacific provides a declarative mechanism by which we can deploy workload clusters, if you will. And this is aligned very much so with what's happening in the CNCF's SIG cluster lifecycle, a project called Cluster API. And the benefit of this is that now operations teams can use declarative manifests like application developers use for deploying their applications, but they can now actually use those same declarative manifests to deploy Kubernetes clusters. And if I'm running one on vSphere, I have a manifest framework. If I'm running one on AWS, I can use the same manifest framework and just slightly tweak things. Like instead of a vSphere OVA, it might be an Amazon AMI as an example. And it allows for this unity of operational framework when deploying Kubernetes across different IaaSes, if you will. This is really, I think, going to get us to more of a, if I should say, a GitOps-ish kind of approach, or at least the possibility of that, for not just the application tiers, but also for our platform teams and operators there as well.
Now, do you have any hands-on doing these operations? What does that look like? Is it as easy and beautiful as you make it sound?
Nothing is as easy and beautiful as I make it sound. Although, so from the standpoint, it can be done in a few different ways. You can stand up the baseline of the platform. By the way, I'm taking my fish off just because I don't want it to burn here. But you can stand up the platform through either through the GUI, in terms of putting all the framework together for Project Pacific. Can be done through the regular vSphere GUI. It can be done through a REST API, vCenter call. But the consumption of the Kubernetes clusters that get spun up for, again, developer teams, DevOps teams, that consumption looks just like kubekettle. So what we've done is we've extended kubekettle with a vSphere plugin so that their interaction from a consumption of the Kubernetes API looks very familiar and common. And the infrastructure or platform team in the form of the vSphere admin, it looks very common to them. Again, trying to bring a low friction or less friction way for infrastructure teams to be able to deliver modern platforms to these dev teams. At the end of the day, Paul, it's about trying to make Kubernetes boring. If I can make Kubernetes boring as a platform, then organizations can actually get about the business of building the things that are going to be interesting and actually driving new capabilities, new markets, new efficiencies, all the things that applications give different enterprises.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so
there
your
is
fish
our
is off.
snapper.
I was about to
Fish is
say,
off.
are we presenting it? The fish is off. Excellent. I've got maybe a minute or two left on my salmon here. It's kind of thick, so I'm just going to give it a moment. And there's about 4 more minutes left of those perch packs.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another bag of oysters and throw it on here just to have a little appetizer in case I get hungry later tonight.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, so I'm going to take this, while you grab your bag of oysters, I'm going to take this moment to speak to the audience. So this is episode 3 of the Blocks and Bytes show. I'm hoping you guys are finding the content good, useful, fun, entertaining, etc. And what I'd like to hear from you is some feedback. What do you think about the show? Do you have topic ideas? What do you think about the format? What would you like to change? What would you like to add? And again, if you want to be a guest, always please reach out. So with that, you can hit me up on Twitter, Paul or ExploreVM. You can email me, paul@explorevm.com. You can find me any platform you can find the word ExploreVM, pretty much I'm there. And what we'll be doing, I don't know how clear this will be, probably not terribly clear, but I've also got stickers made for the show and for the Explore VM podcast as well. Usually we would dole these all out at VMworld. Unfortunately, this year we were not able to go to VMworld. So if you'd like one, drop me a message. I'd be more than happy to throw a few in the mail and send them out. Let's get these out, get the word about the show out. And there'll also be a contest coming up, probably announced in the next episode. I just need to work out a little bit of the logistics to help build the show. So I'm trying to come up with a fun prize for that as well. But again, please reach out. I'd love feedback, good, bad, otherwise. It just helps me evolve the show. And with that, I am now going to remove some fish from this grill.
Let me
I can hear it.
take a
I
look
can
here.
smell it. Oh yeah, let's see. Let's get it up on this tray. A little
That looks
wiggle.
fantastic, man.
Oh, I did not get enough oil underneath. The skin is sticking, but that's quite all right. Not going to eat the skin. Here for the meat. Okay. And actually, we'll give that piece a few more minutes. It's pretty pink. It cracked and it showed us its insides there. But we'll bring this up to the camera here.
Nice.
Nice little about 8-ounce salmon fillet. Just to be safe, I'm going to throw this one back on the grill just momentarily. Because again, the thicker one is still a little pink, so we'll just play it safe. And again, a couple more minutes on those Perch packets. All right, so your fish is pretty much done. Mine's almost done. With our remaining time here, what else? What do you think people should know about Tanzu and about VMware's integration with Kubernetes and the future of apps? Open forum, go nuts.
It's a big question. So,
yeah, oh yeah,
So, I mean, in terms of the future of apps, or that can go in a lot of different ways. I think the vision that excites me about Tanzu is Kubernetes is the fastest open source project, one of the fastest, largest, fastest growing projects, open source projects out there ever. And it's still a little difficult for a lot of enterprises to get their hands around, presuming they're not consuming, some of the SaaS platforms that are out there. What I'm excited about is the fact that we are working towards an environment again where we can just pave the world in a very sort of easy, predictable, repeatable, secure fashion to make the platform concept more consumable, much in the same way that, compute virtualization today after 20 years is just seen as a norm. And I'm excited about that because what that allows us to do is to really focus on the innovation on the consumption layer. How do organizations want to look at policy frameworks? How do they want to look at technologies like service mesh? How do they want to integrate, other interesting projects, serverless and Knative, et cetera, right into this ecosystem? Those, I think, are the harder problems to solve. And I think that a lot of those problems, if we solve them correctly, derive a ton of direct benefit to the organizations. But we've got to get over that hump of making the deployment of the foundation really, really simple. And the goal of Tanzu and what we've done thus far and what we're continuing to invest in, I really think is going to make Kubernetes just simply that. It's going to make it the next sort of universal platform that's easy to roll. And that's what I'm looking forward to, right? I'm really looking forward to just seeing how this just becomes another choice. I've got legacy, or heritage VMs, if you will, traditional VM type workloads. I've got containerized workloads, pretty standard way that delivers it in a secure, repeatable process. And then kind of put a management framework around all of that to allow the people that need to consume it the ability to do so in the way that they need. And so I think it's just really exciting to see it happen. A friend of mine said it once that, when he's looking at it, I remember back in the early days of vSphere, before it was called vSphere, ESX2 and VI3 days, most of the VI admins kind of arose from the server admin, the Windows admin, the Linux sysadmin type of audience. And I really think that the next generation of Kubernetes admins are going to grow a lot from virtual infrastructure administrators. And so being able to be a part of that, that transition for that audience, and then kind of move on to really the application deployment and velocities that we can get there, I think is what's exciting.
That sounds great. Sorry, I was removing my fish from the grill here. So trying to multitask here, listen, talk, grill, the fun part of this show. So I want to thank you for your time. I know also I'll give you one more little platform here.
Yeah.
I tried to schedule this a while back, actually, during the summer. I guess, I mean, it's like, yeah, we're October here. And you actually had some stuff that came up that got in the way. You actually had a charity ride that you were doing. If you want to take a moment and talk about that as well, please use this platform.
Man, I appreciate that so much. Yeah, so I have become a very big supporter and fan of the mission of a group known as Crescent Cove. They're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. In the U.S., there are 4,700 hospice centers in the U.S. providing palliative care to people with shortened life expectancies. But of that, there are only 3 that are geared towards the tragic and unthinkable scenario where it is a child that has a shortened life expectancy. And so this summer, I participated in the Hoka Motorcycle Challenge, which is a 10,000-mile, 14-day motorcycle challenge. No GPS. I didn't know the route ahead of time. They literally give you a paper with turn-by-turn directions. No GPS, no sleeping in hotels. So you're riding, mostly back roads, 18 to 20 hours a day, and then sleeping in parking lots or on the side of the road where you can. And I completed that over the course of the summer, and was real happy that the community, the V community, friends and family, really stepped up, and we raised over $22,000 even in just such a difficult year with COVID and everything. The generosity of the community was just blowing me away. And so I was real excited to be able to be a part of the team and the people that were generous enough to give to support that wonderful cause.
That is awesome. I didn't see the total that was raised, but like you said, in a year such as this year, that's pretty incredible. And I'll be sure to actually, are they still fundraising? Can I include a link in the show notes so if anybody wants to still jump in?
Yeah, there's a link that people can go to. If any VMware people are watching it, it's on the VMware Foundation, and there's some foundation matching that takes place. But if you're not, I've got a link to the show that I'll shoot you, Paul, and people can donate, and it's fully tax deductible, and it goes right to Crescent Cove. There's no administrative costs or anything.
Awesome, that sounds good. I'll be sure to include that, and I really hope VMware employees are watching. So, all right. So with that, where can my audience find you? Should they want to chat more about Tanzu or the charity, or about rides, or about fish, or about whatever?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm H2 only. The O is a 0. That is a story for another show, but that's my Twitter handle is at H2 only. And I pretty much sit on there, reach out via Twitter. You can email me at sray@vmware.com. I'm happy to talk about the platform, the portfolio. I know this wasn't a deeply technical conversation, but hopefully it looked at, sort of where we think we're going with it. But I'm always happy to try to talk technology and learn from, other people in the community and what they're seeing and what they're doing, so that we can all grow together.
That sounds good. Once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Technology, blocks, bytes, grilling. Welcome to Blocks and Bytes.